Okay, so we are going to first open up Photoshop. Once you do that, make sure that your portrait is available. You're going to open from your computer. If it is not already saved or downloaded to your computer, please do that now. Once you're ready, you're going to open that up. Don't worry about creating one with sizing or documents or anything like that. You're just going to open up the picture straightforward. So, something that we need to do before really breaking down this photo and jumping in is changing it over to black and white. So, to change it over to black and white, you're going to head down either to the black and white cookie to create a new adjustment layer and clicking on hue and saturation. You can also find this under the adjustment tabs, but if your screen is not set up like this, head up top to layer, new adjustment layer. Once you have your hue and saturation layer, the options will come up on the right. We're going to take that saturation all the way to the left. And as I do that, you can see that my image becomes desaturated and the color is no longer there. Because this is a new layer, we want to combine our background layer and the hue and saturation to make our next steps a bit easier. I'm going to unlock that layer, go to the top right corner, those lines, and we're going to merge visible or flatten the image. Okay, so now we have one image right here. It's called layer 0. I am actually going to double click and change that name to selfie. This will make it easier when I am referring to each of the layers. So I have my selfie layer with the black and white image. I'm going to head on over to my toolbar. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth tool down is your quick selection tool. Some of you may have the object selection tool there. If you click and hold that down, we're going to head to our quick selection tool. Up top, you have an additional menu. It has your quick selection tool. If you have any presets, they will be there. You have your quick selection tool. You have the quick selection tool with an addition and with a subtraction and the size of your brush, which you can change here or by using the square brackets on your keyboard. Do not worry about any of this. All we have to do is click Select Subject. This is an awesome feature that Photoshop has added, making it much easier to pick out a subject. When you zoom on in with Command plus if you're on a Mac or Control plus on a PC, holding down the keyboard actually gives you this little hand and it makes it much easier to move around. I'm going to go back up top where my addition and subtraction is. I'm going to make this brush a little bit smaller and I'm going to remove anything that is not part of me. It keeps grabbing some of the background and I don't want that to happen. I'm going to head down to the bottom and I need to add that piece on. So I'm going to add by going to the plus sign and click on here. Zoom back out. You may have some little pieces floating around. Just double check for all those dancing ants and see where they're at. When you are selected and you have this dotted outline or these dancing ants, we are then going to mask what we have in front of us. You can do this two different ways. You can go down to the rectangle with the circle, or as I like to call it, the Swiss cheese, and you could add a layer mask. Another option is to go to layer, layer mask, and we are going to go to reveal selection. So that means we're keeping the selection. So if you just, let me go back. If you just click on that option, it will reveal selection when you add that mask to it. One less thing for you to worry about. When this is selected, we actually want to get rid of this background. So we're going to go up top, go to layer, layer mask, and we're going to apply our layer mask. So essentially, and I'll go back so you can see, the white is what we are looking at. The black is what is blacked out or hidden. So by going to layer, layer mask, apply, it's removing what was hidden. So we have that nice empty background. You should see this checkerboard. That's that transparency. We're going to add on a new layer. On the bottom right corner of your layers palette, you can click the square with the plus sign to create a new layer, or you can go back to your layers palette, new layer. I'm going to name this background. If it appears over here, you just hit that plus sign, same thing as the selfie, double click and type in background. With this, I'm going to just add a plain white background. So we're going to do this by going to our toolbar about halfway down. Some of you may see the gradient tool. We're going to change that to the paint bucket. Remember, anything that has a small triangle in the bottom right corner, there is some other tools hidden underneath. On the paint bucket, there's a few different ways you can change up the colors. While you're on this left-hand side, down at the bottom, you have your foreground color and your background color. By double clicking, you can change this around. We're going to keep it on white. If you go to the top right corner and your color palette is here, you can move around. You can also go to swatches and take a peek in here. Like I said, we're going to stick with white. I'm going to click on this screen and it's going to dump and fill the entire screen. This will be our background, hence the name background layer. We are clicking and dragging that down to the bottom. So now we have our selfie and it looks like we have a nice plain background. Next step, let's click on our selfie layer. When we click on this selfie layer, it's going to become a lighter gray. That means that it's selected, and that is very important with this next step. We're going to do another mask, but we're going to use a tool that we used in our last project, our rectangular marquee. Again, if it's on elliptical, find that rectangular one. I'm going to slice my picture in half, and for this example, I'm going to select the right-hand side. That's the side that I'm going to keep. So with that selection, I'm going to go down and select the mask. Again, if you want to do it another way, layer, layer mask, reveal selection. Okay, so now when we look at our layers palette, we see that mask, what's hidden and what is visible. So when that is hidden, we're going to leave that for now. We are going to come back to it. We're going to now add our quote. We've selected a quote, and I'm going to do this by going to the T, the text tool. I'm going to click and drag out a text box, and then I'm going to change that once the words are added. So your quote should have been submitted prior to today on Google Classroom. So right now I just have the filling that Photoshop provides me with. I am going up top to change the font. I recommend Impact for this because it's going to be a nice bold font. And let's see, I did use a font, a quote, prior. Let me find one to add in so you could see what it looks like. When searching for the right font, you want to make sure that you're using a heavy font because that is going to be filled in with your image. So here we go. This was the quote I used. I'll use this again. Okay. So even if you have a small quote, that is fine. I'm using, like I said, a nice bold font. You can change up the sizing here. Some of you, your character palette will show up on the side. If you don't see that, you can go to Window, Character, and it will have that palette pop up, or with the little A with the vertical line. So next thing I need you to do, whether you chose the left or the right side to keep, we want to align it with the face. So what does that look like? I'm going to go to my paragraph option, and you have that up here as well. And I'm going to align it to the right. So I'm right aligning my text. If your face is on the opposite side, you will be using the left. I am just going to change this up a little bit, moving some words. I'm going to make my text box a bit smaller. And when I switch to my move tool, it allows me to stretch. Now, if I were asking you to do an assignment that was based on typeface, I would never want you to stretch it like this. But for the sake of this assignment, I will allow you to do that. So I'm going to have this take up most of the space. I'm going to have it go all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. Once I have that, we're in good shape and make sure that it's aligned. I could hit this little check mark. I'm going to hide up my paragraph palette and all of that. I'm going to click back on my selfie layer. Now I know we're bouncing around, but there is a method to my madness. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, I'm going to scoot this down a bit. Click on that selfie layer. We're going to duplicate it. You could do this two different ways, like everything else. You could either click and drag that down to the new layer option and it will duplicate it, or you can go up top to layer, duplicate layer. This is going to come up as selfie copy. So if you've been following so far, you should have your text, selfie copy, selfie, and background. On the layer copy, we're going to remove this mask. So by doing that, we want to select this layer and we're going to go to layer, layer mask, delete. So if you do this correctly, you should have the text over your portrait. That's all we did. We kept the original that we started with, and then we added the mask, and now we removed it. Essentially, we could have started with this, copied it, and then put a mask, but I find this way a little bit easier. We're going to go back to our text and click on that so it's highlighted. You know that it's selected because it is a light gray highlight over that layer, and then also the bounding box around the text. We are going to rasterize this text. We're going to go up top where it says type, and we're going to do rasterize type layer. Okay. When you do that, your image may slightly change. You will see that checkerboard pattern. You will see a little bit of a gray tone in there. You'll see what that's going to look like in a moment. When you are on your thumbnail, you're going to hold down Control and click on that layer thumbnail, select pixels. That is now going to take your text. It flattened it from the text tool to more of an image, I would compare it to. And then we were able to select the pixels similar to how we selected the subject. We are going to click on selfie copy. We're going to layer, layer mask, and then we're going to do reveal selection. Okay, and what that has done, it has now blocked out the face behind, but in the text, it actually picks up some of the images. So if you do want to readjust or change your opacity, that's really the only thing I would recommend doing. If you go all the way up to 100, it is going to block out the photo of you underneath. We do want to see a lot of what's happening under there. So I'm right now at a 10%. You don't want to go too light because you'll lose the text here. If your text is very close to your face, it makes it much easier to go lighter. But essentially, this is what we're looking for, which looks pretty cool. We are going to save it as a Photoshop to your computer. So you'll do that now. And then you're also going to file export as, and we're going to save it up as a JPEG as well. Those two are going to be uploaded to Google Classroom for you to receive credit.